my first time in a stick shift.
Demonitors.
Am I doing okay for my first time? So we are gonna get the video started here shortly, but we forgot that we had to remove the windshield wipers. Not just the blades, the entire windshield wipers. So we have to go get a puller so that we can actually pull the windshield wiper. Last time we did this, last time we took the supercharger off, it took us forever to get those bolts off. Luckily we have a advance. Yeah,
one of those.
Auto's on? I think it's auto's on.
Well, we're getting ready to see it as we crest this hill.
It's advance. I'm gonna put $3 on advance.
I have a dollar bill. I'm pretty sure it's AutoZone.
Ah, oh, damn it! He was right.
It's an AutoZone. Gotta get in the zone. Park next to the truck.
Seems a little more better. All right, well, they didn't have it, nor did they know what the we were talking about, so
They were real proud to show us their doohickey.
they were real proud to show us their doohickeys. So we came in looking for a windshield wiper puller, walked away knowing what a doohickey is. Nobody has what we're looking for, so we had to improvise. Tie rod end puller. I think it'll work. But we also got, and I'm really excited about this. I've been trying to buy these forever, and I always look at them and go, I don't need them right now. And then finally
got 'em.
something just like, when I walked in the store, these just lit up. It was like Jesus was standing there talking to me.
I think the guy's name was Jesus, but whatever. He had a name tag on, didn't really speak much. Here we go, crossing the Rio Grande.
In Mexico.
Ta-da, we're in Mexico.
Alright, I'm gonna try no lift shift for the first time ever. Oh, that was beautiful. That was fantastic. I gotta do it again. So what you guys missed so far is that we have basically just taken all the plastic off, and then we weren't recording when we did that, but we figured out that we have to take the windshield wipers off, which we already knew that, but we weren't prepared. So we didn't have the tool that we needed to do that, nor did anyone else, so we had to compromise and get a tie rod end puller, which is essentially the same thing. I haven't done any kind of introduction or anything yet. So what we are doing today is installing these spacers, which I ordered 2 months ago. The spacers came in and the bolts did not. Did you get it? Did you break it?
Maybe.
The bolts just came in, like yesterday. So what's today?
Today's Friday.
So here's what we are doing now. We're gonna take these windshield wipers off. That is gonna be your first step. Next, remove this. You gotta pull these up. Those come right off. And then this should lift right out, if I'm not mistaken. This is another one of those things where we haven't done it before, so the supercharger has come off, but
superchargers come off, not out.
yes. There we go.
No.
So what you guys missed while John was taking a doo-doo is once you get the windshield wipers off, you got to pull the little flashing piece, which is this, right? And that sits in there like that, and all it does is these just clip down into the weather stripping on the bottom of the glass. Once you do that, you got to find all the little bolts that are holding this piece on. You got to take all those off, and then you got to take the windshield wiper mechanism off, and then this thing should just come right out.
Ta-da!
Now,
Look at all those chickens.
okay, the rest of this should be fairly easy.
Now it's just unbolting.
Yeah, now it's just unbolting and pulling the supercharger off. So now, all we got to do is pull the fuel rails.
Here's the fun part. So, supercharger's off, currently upside down, but off. Getting ready to replace these gaskets here with these here spacers.
So this is the main reason why we're doing this, okay? We're not really looking for a lot of power, but you see this piece of rubber gasket here?
And then right here where there's a hole.
Yeah, so this is why we're doing this, because these are known to break and cause boost leak. So, in order to keep that from happening, it is recommended
that you replace those with an aftermarket set. Right. Or, in this case, spacers, because that thick plastic is not going to give up the ghost the same way these rubber and aluminum gaskets.
Yeah. Alright guys, so we are taking our first drive in the Jeep after installing the FI interchiller or supercharger spacers. We ran into a couple of problems last night when we were doing this, and before we knew it, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were just kind of trying to get everything back together. So I'm taking my first drive right now just to make sure that the coolant temps stay down, because I thought I'd gotten all the air pockets out and started it up this morning. Started it up, and within a couple of minutes it was already at like 220 degrees, and it wasn't dropping, it was continuing to rise. So I think I got all of them out now. I took one of the wrong coolant lines off whenever we were trying to take the supercharger off the block, and when I put it back on, it didn't snap down all the way. So when I started it earlier, it blew that line off and I lost some coolant. So that's where it got most of the air pockets from, I'm assuming. Hopefully I got all of them out. I mean, we're staying pretty normal now with the air or the coolant temps. So I'm taking it for a little drive just to see what happens. And right now I've got the windshield wiper assembly completely off, along with the sound deadener, so I can hear everything in the engine bay that moves, everything. So I'm gonna finish this drive real quick, and when I get back I'm gonna basically go over everything that we did and had to take off in order to get this to work properly. Most of you that are watching this are probably mechanically inclined enough to be able to figure it out, but it's a different process. You can't just pull the supercharger off. You have to take the windshield wiper assembly off. You have to take the sound deadener off. I mean, it's a whole process to do all that. Be back in just a few minutes. All right, guys. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown on everything that I had to take off in order to get the actual supercharger off so that we could put these spacers in. Some of it's going to be in the video, but I'm going to give you a rundown because we didn't catch all of it. So as you can tell, there are no windshield wiper blades. All this is basically all of your flashing. That's your sound deadener. All that stuff sits right back here, okay? You have to pull all that stuff off because the bolts on the back side of the supercharger, you can't get to them, you can't take them off unless you take all that stuff off. It's really not that hard. It's all 10 millimeter. It's still really kind of a pain in the ass because it's a lot of stuff that you got to take off just to get to 5 bolts in the back of the supercharger. So obviously you got to take off all your plugs. You know, take this one off, take all the ones off the front down here. You got to pull the belt off. You got to unplug your temperature sensor back here. There's another sensor down here. You can't really see it, but it's right there. Pull your fuel rails. I took the injectors off just to check them out, clean them off. I've been getting some really dirty fuel apparently. Once you do that, I pulled the intake off. We took the throttle body off just because there's a vacuum hose that runs to your brake booster, and the vacuum hose is a pain in the ass to get off unless you take the throttle body off. So we pulled the throttle body just to get that off. You got to pull this one off, and then after that, once you get the fuel rails disconnected and get the injectors pulled off, get all the coolant lines pulled off. There's 2 coolant lines on the back that you got to take off. So those 2 lines right there, those got to come off. Once you pull all that off, you unbolt it with all these bolts right here. Take all those bolts off, and you can just lift the supercharger right off. Now, the problem that we ran into is there was still coolant in the supercharger. So when we pulled it off, some of the coolant came out of the back of the supercharger and went straight into the cylinder, right into the intake port and right down into the cylinder. So we vacuumed it all out, or everything that we could. It ran rough for a couple of minutes, but it kind of cleared up. Now I'm just going to do an oil change on it and go from there, but everything else seems to be running fine. I haven't seen any in the oil yet, so just to be safe though, we're gonna do an oil change on it. I'm gonna do that tomorrow, but other than that, everything else is back together. I still got to put the windshield wiper assembly back on, and got to put the heat shield or the sound deadener and the flashing. And once I get all that back on, then we're good to go. Alright guys, so I've been digging with this thing for almost 2 days now, trying to figure out why the coolant levels are jumping up and down and up and down and up and down. So after we got the spacers on, put everything back together, purged the lines to make sure that we got all the air out, it was still running a little bit hot, and I couldn't figure out why. I called Demon Performance and said, look, I purged the lines, it's still blowing air out and I can't figure out why. When I was doing this, I was using basically just a water jug with a funnel attached to it and letting it, come up in to purge all the air out. I noticed that it kept pushing coolant back into the water jug. So I went and got a radiator cap with a bleeder on it. Okay? Put that on there, went and drove it, let it heat up a little bit, purge the line. Did that like 5, 6, 7 times, something like that. And it finally started doing good. It was running about 185, 186, maybe 188 on the high end. So, got it back to the house, pulled it into the garage. Just for shits and giggles, I pulled it in and let it sit for a few minutes, and it jumped up to like 206. Fans kicked on, cooled it back down. I purged the system, but when I purged the system, pulled this up, it would collapse this line completely. So, called Demon Performance back, and I was like, look, I don't know what the hell's going on. I purged the system. The only other thing I can do is try to vacuum it. As I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking, the only way that that line could completely collapse like that, and I mean collapse, like it wasn't just kind of falling in, it was collapsing completely. The only way that that could happen is if there's a stoppage somewhere, if there's something stopping the flow of the coolant from moving through the system. I talked to a couple of people, and you know, I haven't done a lot of coolant systems, but I've done enough to where I know that that's not supposed to happen. I thought maybe, just maybe, I got a bad thermostat. So I called O'Reilly. I said, look, I need a thermostat for this. Oh, we don't have it. Well, it's 180 degree. So we did some research and cross-referenced the thermostat that's in here with another one that they had. Now, I don't know how good the brand is. I've never used them before. It's Murray. But the one that was in here was a Stant thermostat. So I went and got a thermostat. I came back. I opened up the housing and pulled the thermostat out in two pieces. Just like that. So, there was the issue. I put the new thermostat back in, cranked it up, purged all the air out of the line. Now it's sitting at 185 and it won't move. I don't understand. I don't get it. I have the worst luck with this kind of thing. When I got the Hellraiser pulley, I got the first generation of it, which didn't come with the little spacer. I put it on, I tightened it down, started it up, and I heard a grinding noise. Couldn't figure out what that was. Come to find out, the pulley was touching the snout. So I had to grind the snout down. Oh, man. Unlucky, man. Unlucky. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you on the next video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, click the little bell. I've got to clean this thing up because there's coolant everywhere. We will see you on the next one.